All right.
What's up, everybody? It's Joel from Blackwood, and I'm kind of in heaven right now. I needed to be able to show these two trucks side by side, and I wanted to share them with you guys. I know it's actually pretty hard to find content on either of these two. I've been searching myself and saw nothing, and I'm just looking at home when maybe I'm in bed and my truck's down in the garage. I just want to see some content, and I want to know a little bit more about these things. So I thought, hey, might as well get these two out. This guy's going to his new home really soon. This guy, he's in my home. He's not going anywhere, but I thought, you know, why not talk about the differences and show you guys what it's like seeing side by side a cool first gen, like a first gen 0.2 4Runner, and then a second gen. These guys, I don't know if anyone knows this, but the 4Runner, from what I understand, was actually produced by Toyota from a partnership Toyota had with Winnebago, and they had those first 80s pickups. They took an 80s pickup and Winnebago bought them and then threw on a canopy on the back, sealed it to the cab, removed the wall from in between, and kind of created the first SUV. From that, they had pretty good success with it, and from there they went into the 4Runner. So maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but these guys have a removable roof. That would be one of the stark differences between a second gen and a first gen. These first gens, from the cab back, so from about here, just behind the sunroof, from the back, like a Jeep, you can unbolt the roof, pop that sucker off, and you actually have a roll bar in the back, providing the safety for your rear passengers. These guys in the second gen, so this is an 89, this is a 92. This generation, or the second generation, that started in 1990, so the year after this guy. This is the last year of the first generation. So in these second generations, obviously there's a lot of changes here. Some of the biggest changes, obviously, with body, interior, they kept the same front suspension, so it's an independent front suspension with a torsion bar system. But in the back, this guy, he uses a leaf spring setup. This guy uses a coil spring. Much easier to lift these guys, but you're still, I wouldn't say handicapped, but you're held back a little bit compared to a completely McPherson strut style front suspension with the second gen. This guy, as we're comparing these two, so both of them have really cool histories. This one was a one owner truck up until 2020. I just got it in 2020. This guy was a one owner truck until 2020, and this just traded hands too. Big difference between the two as far as the storyline. This has 42,000 kilometers. This one has 222,000 kilometers. Fairly big difference between the two for mileage, but this guy was fastidious in his upkeep of the truck. So there's a whole binder full of every single receipt, his original delivery, all the stamps from service, but optically they're both in great shape. This guy's got a smaller tire on him right now, but typically you'd see one of these with a 31-inch tire, just like we have over here on the second gen. A lot of things changed, like in the doors and all the body panels. I mean, that's kind of an obvious one, but so much change when you look at the front end of these trucks and the differences. But some of the stuff that you see that is similar between the two of them, headlight shape, there's things in the interior that you'd see the same. Toyota's for a long time used the same switches and buttons that you'd see even on a new truck. I think in my third generation or 99 4Runner, I've got the same window switches, the same cruise control switch as I do in my 2021 Tacoma. That's kind of weird. They do both use the same 3-liter V6. So this guy, he uses the little 3-liter, which interestingly, I don't know if you knew it or not, this guy's the 3-liter as well, which was the bigger optional engine for back in the day. But both of these guys That 3-liter is actually the same block as you find in the 3.4 liter that came in the 3rd generation 4Runner, or that came in the 1st generation Tacoma. It's a bulletproof engine, used a ton. A lot of people take that 3.4 liter and swap them into these 2nd gens and these 1st gens, and get a lot more life out of their trucks with that. The interiors were a massive, massive change. If you look at the interior in a 1st generation, very retro, very, very 80s feeling inside. The doors are super light. It's a solid Toyota feel in closing the door, but it feels a lot lighter than it does in the 2nd gen. Let me pull that key out. The seats were quite a lot different. These were a sports seat, and they are quite comfy. It's all original underneath there and very similar to the 2nd gen, but the seats were different. That steering wheel just screams old school. That dash does as well. All the controls in the interior, the dash, it feels a lot more pieced together, and I would imagine the injection mold systems and the manufacturing process for in the 80s, is between the 80s and then jumping to the 90s was a pretty big and massive difference. This guy's luckily a 5-speed. You don't let go of a 5-speed old 1st gen 4Runner if you got one. This guy uses their 4-speed automatic transmission that they use for a number of years, and pretty resilient. Pretty cool to see the two side by side. The stance is very similar, but the lines are so different. That rear window that you see in that 1st generation 4Runner, that's a sliding rear window, so it doesn't roll down, it doesn't pop out. But these rear windows, they just slid down, or sorry, slid back, which is funny. That just screams old school. I remember being a kid and we had an old F-150, a 79 F-150, and it had the little pop-out rear windows, kind of the same generation type of thing. Pretty cool though. However, this top, there's no chance this thing is staying on this summer. Another similarity back in these guys, and a big change that came about in the 3rd generation. So these 1st generations and then these 2nd generations, they actually have a rear window that rolls down. That's the same in a 3rd gen, but the big difference is that to get into the back, you got to roll down the rear window, and then you pull the tailgate, and it's that actual truck style tailgate that folds down with the window inside it. If you're in a 3rd generation, you can open it like a hatch, open it up, you don't have to do anything with the window, but as an iconic 4Runner thing, rear window always rolls down. Wheels, these guys and these guys use the same wheels. This is, and I don't know this, I need to check with somebody. I bet you the chrome wheel was actually the premium wheel back in the day, and the aluminum wheel that you see on the 2nd gen over here, this guy, which I find is the iconic one, I bet you either they were the same or the chrome was the upgrade. Chroming isn't cheap. I personally like the aluminum SR5 wheel, and I've got a set that'll be going on the other guy. But it's funny when you see the two side by side, it's such a difference. It's, you know, the 2nd generation really feels modern, and that body styling, it still has more of a modern look to it. It doesn't feel super old when you're looking at it. But if you saw in a minute ago when we went inside of the 1st gen, when you look at the 3rd gen and you look at its dash, a lot rounder, smoother lines, just a more modern look to it. That AC or the climate control, that's very similar in the two, so that carried on into the 2nd gen, but smoother lines, better sound isolation inside. And quite a bit more of a solid thud when you close the door in a 2nd gen as opposed to a 1st gen or pre-1st gen, I guess, on the 4Runner when you're talking about a pickup truck. Anyway, I really wanted you guys to see these two side by side. I could ramble on. I'm sure you might be getting bored by now, but I think we'll leave you with some footage of both these trucks together in this really good lighting. Thanks again for clicking. I'm going to try and keep bringing you as much content as possible. It's probably always going to almost be Toyota, and I hope you enjoyed our builds and the content. Thanks very much.